The aging members of a classic rock band are dying on stage. Literally. This week we are talking about sex
Drugs.
and the true blues path on.
Welcome to Midsomer.
Hello and welcome to Midsomer, the podcast where we dissect all the mysteries, the murders, and the many weird things about the long-running hit TV show Midsomer Murders. I'm your host Eric Buscher, and with me as always is my co-host Eileen Becker. Hey Eileen.
Hey, Eric. Today we're talking about the AXEMAN COMETH, the fourth episode of season 10 of Midsomer Murders. It originally aired February 2nd, 2007, and was directed by Rennie Rye and written by David Hoskins.
What an episode. This is one of my favorites. It is so crazy.
It's really a terrific episode. It's not a great mystery, I don't think, but it is a great episode. It's got some great performances and some really top-notch actors in it, and a really great guest star. I will tell you that, who we will talk about. And I also think, this is the kind of classic Midsummer where it hits its stride. Not that it, as we discussed last week in the pilot, not that it ever had a slow start, but this is a really terrific part of the Midsummer Murders seasons.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those ones where it just sort of it explodes the world a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and we get to see some of the characters that we have established, like we've seen established in especially Barnaby in a brand new light. And I do want to say thank you for all the wonderful responses we've received for our first episode. We were very excited and a little nervous to share it with you, and seeing all the wonderful, nice things that people have said, the great reviews that we've seen. Just really want to say thank you, and we are going to keep going and get even better and I hopefully more entertaining for you.
I can't agree more, Eric. We've had so much fun doing this, and we're glad that you all are enjoying it as well.
Before we get into the episode, spoiler warning. We will be discussing the events of this episode, including the identity of the murderer. So if you haven't watched it yet and don't want to know who done it, pause this and go watch it. We will still be here when you get back. And a 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hired gun. They were brilliant. They took the basic 12-bar blues format, but within it they created a completely new rock blues crossover.
That's really interesting, sir.
Two men enjoy some country fishing until they discover a pig's carcass deposited in the stream as a warning. At the same time, in a care facility, an older woman becomes disturbed and runs around the room. Is she seeing a vision of the bloody pig water? Is she receiving portents of doom? Who knows? They never really explain that bit. In the village of Badger's Drift, the members of the classic rock band Hired Gun converge for their first reunion gig in decades. They will be replaying the Midsummer Music Festival, a few days of fun and music in the murder capital of the UK. DCI Barnaby is very excited as he was a huge fan of the band in their day, and constantly lets us know how revolutionary they were in playing 12-bar blues. The band features guitarist Jack, the Axeman McKinley, sloppy drunk singer Mimi Clifton, hard of hearing drummer Nicky Harding, and paranoid bassist Gary Cooper. Gary was one of the opening fishermen and lives on an estate with his two assistants, James Hobson and Serena Stanton, although that relationship feels more like they are in charge of him. Gary purchased the estate from the Harcourt family, who now live in a cottage just outside the property. Gary's trying to kick them off, but Mrs. Harcourt, who's known Gary since school, makes a counteroffer. Let them stay, and not only will she continue their private Henry Higgins-style etiquette lessons, but she will also sleep with him, possibly also in Henry Higgins style. The rest of the band, plus Jack's weird daughter Willow, arrive at the estate. Seems like Gary is the only member of the band who is doing well financially since they broke up years ago, sometime after member Ginger Foxton disappeared in a car crash and was presumed dead. Their appearance at the festival is just the start of a planned reunion tour and a new album with their new manager, Sam Dickhead Dixon, the son of their dead former manager. As a mysterious van follows the band around, spying on them, Jack and Nicky hit a local pub where they meet Barnaby, who has been annoying everyone with his constant air guitar and rock talk. The meeting does not go well. He also runs into his old boss, D.I. Owen Jenkins, whose career was destroyed because of the unsolved Foxton case. That night, someone dressed in a weird clown costume goes under the festival stage to do some mysterious drilling. The band arrives for their slot at the festival, and Gary freaks out because he is supposed to sing the first song and cannot handle it. Instead, it is decided that Mimi will sing first, which she does for about one verse before she is electrocuted while holding the mic. Barnaby quickly determines that this was murder. Gary is convinced he was the target because of all the dead animal carcasses he has been receiving, and someone sent him a video that he believes shows Ginger is still alive and trying to kill him. Barnaby questions McKinley because he is a former electrician, but he was on stage at the time of the murder, so how could he have done it? After the quick interrogation, the pair of them jam on some John Lee Hooker in what can only be described as the most disturbing event in the entire episode. And this episode has dead animals in it. Barnaby says this murder was meticulously planned, which isn't something go-with-the-flow musicians could think up, and McKinley goes from suspect to target when his motorcycle explodes just as he was about to ride on it.
Okay. Excuse me while I unpack my bottle of vodka from my trunk. A lot happens in that first half, and we meet some really great characters. But let's go back to Badger's Drift, because that's where it all started. We discussed Badger's Drift in the first episode. It's appeared in several episodes, including Death's Shadow, Midsummer Rhapsody, The Great and the Good, and The Killings of Copenhagen. Some local sites include the Biscuit Factory, which is where they make cookies, not actual biscuits to us Americans, a nice old church, a local theater company, the Frobisher Night Auction, and yeah, that one flower that got that poor old lady killed last episode. So
yeah. So I think that any discussion of this episode really, as we hinted at the beginning, really has to look at Barnaby and his. Is it a midlife crisis? What he is just going on about this band. He is playing air guitar. He's going through the old records. He's talking the 12-bar blues.
He's reliving his youth.
It's definitely reliving his youth.
Yeah. And when the band arrives in town, and especially when the Axeman shows up, he becomes total fanboy.
He
and
does.
As much as he tries to rein it in when he's technically interviewing the Axeman, it never quite comes off.
Well, number one, he jams with him.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand that Barnaby is so starstruck that he's like, well, I was on stage. I was like, that's true. Hey, do you want to play some John Lee Hooker? And it's weird because we've never heard him before or after talk about this love of blues music or the true blues path or whatever, which I don't know what that means. I Googled true blues path and doesn't seem to be anything that I could see.
Well, we know it is not Merseyside covers. That's for sure.
First of all, that scene where he's like, we played all the blues greats, Johnson and Hopkins and John Lee Hooker. I'm like, that is literally like if I said, I'm really deep into rock, Elvis, the Beatles, the Stones.
He's not delving deep into the genre, is he?
No, and I mean, he talks about Hired Gun as the masters of the 12-bar blues. So I am not a musical expert.
Me neither.
I Googled what the 12-bar blues is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a basic chord progression. It's all it is. It's one of 3 or 4 basic chord progressions for blues songs. And it's the one that's where the first line and the second line are repeats. And then the third line starts as a repeat. And then at the end, it sort of morphs into something different. So, Hopkins or Hooker or Johnson are classic examples of that because it's da 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 da. And then you would get that line again. And then the third line would be da 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 da. That's the 12-bar blues. It's not some huge, overly complicated. Again, you have to you have to be good at it to do the blues well, but it doesn't seem like anything that's it's a corner foundation, but it's not some the way Barnaby portrays it is some complicated maneuver that Hired Gun has somehow surpassed.
He surpassed Johnson?
Yeah.
Robert Johnson? I don't think so. But, there's also the contrapuntal rhythms in the blues that do lead you to an appreciation of madrigals.
Oh God, that was
That was insane. I
that
love
was
that scene.
that's such a great scene. When madrigals, everyone loves madrigals on this show. My favorite bit in all of this was when he is annoying Cully at home by doing the air guitar.
That is classic.
And she just looks at him, and he mimes taking off the guitar and putting it down.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a white guy. I do plenty of air guitar. I don't think I've ever mimed taking my air guitar off. Mostly I just stopped doing air guitar.
Well, as she tells him, let's keep that generation gap in place.
It's just so odd to see Barnaby this way.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. He is reliving his childhood.
It is nice to see a looser Barnaby, though,
Mm-hmm.
where Jones is actually the skeptic and the guy who's basically calling him in on a lot of stuff because he is not buying at all what Barnaby is selling.
No, in fact, Barnaby's wrong. Barnaby is like, we talked last time about how the Midsomer method tends to be your sidekick is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The sidekick is wrong, so Barnaby can be right.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, Barnaby is wrong. Like, Jones is like, should we look at the musicians?
Mm-hmm.
And Barnaby's like, no, musicians couldn't think of this.
Yeah.
They're right brains. This is a left brain thing. I'm like,
yeah, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
And the look Jones gives him tells you that he knows it's bullshit. Yeah. He never specifically says it, but I'm pretty sure that Jones had to figure it out right from the beginning.
He seemed in on it. Let's just take a moment then. Let's take a moment real fast, and like, this is our first Jones. Jones comes in. He was the third DC, and I think probably the longest running, with like eight years.
Yes, he exceeded Troy by 1 or 2 seasons, I believe. Yep. Yeah,
and he was he handled the switch over between the Barnabys.
Mm-hmm.
He was played by Jason Hughes. Jason Hughes' first big role, funny enough, was on a show called This Life, where he played a lawyer named Jones.
No.
He's since Midsomer Murders, since he left in 2013, he did do one appearance back. He also appeared in shows like Death in Paradise, Marcella, and most recently The Pact. He left Midsomer because he was basically tired of being away from his home and his family for up to 6 months out of the year, which I can understand. It's a huge commitment, and it's his family wasn't in the area, so he, if he wanted to go spend time with them, he had a hell of a commute.
Yeah, and his family was in Bristol, right? If I remember correctly.
I think so.
Most of Midsomer is filmed in that area just north of London.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly in Bedfordshire, but a little bit in Oxfordshire and other areas. And they're basically filming almost 2-hour episodes. And so they are basically movies.
Right. And they're shooting at least 6 of them a season.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a big commitment.
Yeah. One more fun fact. He was school friends with the actor Michael Sheen.
Oh.
And lived with him when Hughes was attending the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts. I don't know why he couldn't get Michael Sheen to do an appearance.
I know. That would have been great to see Michael Sheen as a murder victim or a murderer.
He'd be the murderer at that
point. He would be the murderer, yeah.
He would be the murderer. Jones, for me, he is sort of Jones and Barnaby are that is my core Midsomer. That is the for me, they are the pair that's the best.
Yeah.
I thought Jones brings a lot of humor to it.
Mm-hmm.
They would give him, and they also gave him stuff to do, like, won't they relationships with other detectives. They gave him a lot of humor, Jones, Jason Hughes is a very funny actor.
Mm-hmm. Great timing.
Yeah. I really loved the chemistry between Hughes and Nuns.
Yeah. And to be honest, I don't know if when we moved from Tom Barnaby to John Barnaby, if Jason Hughes hadn't been there as Ben Jones, if that would have been as successful as it was.
Yeah.
So we had Jones providing that continuity because, we had a new main detective. We have his whole new family coming on, and Jones provides that skepticism that the audience was feeling.
Yeah.
And slowly he comes around, as the audience does for the most part. There's still diehard Tom fans out there.
The old Tom heads.
Yeah.
I love Jones. It's not a big Jones episode, but it is, like, as we said, it's one of the rare ones where he's more on it than Barnaby because he is not blinded by super fandom of Hired Gun.
Yeah. And he gets a few great lines in. And the reaction he has when he finds out that someone's alibi involves Barnaby's daughter is classic.
Well, let's circle back to that one, because I really think at this point we've got to start talking about Hired Gun.
Well, and with Hired Gun, you have to start with the Axeman and James freaking Cosmo.
Yeah.
James Cosmo. He's probably best known for playing the old bear J.R. Mormont, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch in Game of Thrones. And you can see a little bit of those expressions in him. He's been working, however, since the mid-60s, recently appearing in shows like His Dark Materials, Death in Paradise, Merlin, and for some reason, Celebrity Big Brother, and in films such as Braveheart, Wonder Woman, and Babe, Pig in the City. He's a consistently entertaining actor, and he really stands out in this role. And I think the Midsomer team really knew what they had when they had him, and really put him at the center. But you seem to think he doesn't know how to play guitar.
I'm not sure. Well, first of all, every time they showed him holding a guitar, the guitar looked weird. It just seemed like this weird, shiny new guitar that he's always kind of noodling. And I guess I just think of, like, when I think of, like, guitar players, like great guitar players, their guitars are like an extension of them, and it just didn't seem that way. Also, and maybe this is some kind of weird bias. Cosmo is a big dude. Like, he's a physically big dude with big ass hands. And I'm like going, those might not be the most dexterous hands of a guitar playing god, because it just seems like they're like, I got chords. I could do the chords. That's all. It's like big sausage fingers.
Yeah.
And not to dismiss that his acting, he is a great actor. It just was like, he seemed like a weird choice to be like a guitar player. For singing wise, I thought it was really inspired choice for Mimi Clifton, as that they brought in Susie Quattro, who is not an actress as much as a real rock star. She is considered one of the early groundbreaking female rock stars. She found more success. She's from the US, but she's found more success abroad than in her home country. In the UK, she had #1 hits with 1973's Can the Can and 1974's Devilgate Drive. In the US, her biggest hit was more of a duet with Chris Norman called Stumblin' In. And she is probably recognizable to a lot of people for her performance on Happy Days, where she played Leather Tuscadero, a bass player. But in Happy Days, she didn't give us this classic line read.
I got the stone munchies.
Happy Days was a little cleaner. Nobody talked about the stone munchies in Happy Days.
The death scene was kind of a classic.
Yeah.
But it did, in some ways, I think it saved us from having to listen to whatever the hell the rest of that song was going to be. I have the lyrics here, by the way. So this is the lyrics for Dollhouse Blues.
Okay.
You gotta rock it in the cradle, roll under the table, never take it easy, gotta live it nice and sleazy, party till you're drunk, ain't never gonna stop, got nothing to lose, sing the Dollhouse Blues with me. Eileen, what is this about?
I don't know, but Susie really sells it.
I mean, it's not even a song. It's a quarter of a song. they get a quarter of the song out before she gets killed.
Yeah.
No one is even credited with writing it on, like, if you look up this episode on IMDb, there is no songwriting. Nobody wants to take claim for Dollhouse Blues.
What's weird is that they also never give credit to like the artist. Like in the first episode, they had that big painting that was very key to figuring out who the murderer was, and there is no credit for it anywhere. So it's odd that they don't give those credits to these, and I assume they're hired out artists. Somebody was contracted to write this song. Maybe not Susie, because she's busy doing other stuff, but
and only got that vodka bottle. I mean,
the vodka bottle. She always has the label facing her, never to the camera. The one time you do see it, kind of a little bit, it's basically just says vodka.
So just like that bit where she gets there and she opens the trunk, and the only thing she pulls out is that vodka bottle. I was like, I mean, you could put that in the back seat.
Yeah.
Tell me about Phil Davis.
Phil Davis, he plays Gary Cooper, not the actor, the bass player. He's another British character actor with a lengthy resume dating back to the early 70s. You've probably seen him in Quadrophenia, Pink Floyd's The Wall, Vera Drake, which earned him a BAFTA nomination, Whitechapel, and Sherlock. And here's a really interesting fact. Daniel Day-Lewis found Dave's performance as a student who impulsively takes several teachers hostage in a TV adaptation of the Barry Keefe play Gotcha as a huge inspiration to him, and ranks Davis up there with De Niro, Brando, and Streep. He did get to star in the same movie. Well, not actually star. They were both very young actors at that time. In the 1984's The Bounty, they did both appear together and work together. So that was probably something that Daniel Day-Lewis found very exciting. And Gary Cooper or Phil Davis probably said, "Who is this guy who's following me around all the time?"
I mean, even then, I'm trying to think of like Lewis would probably be right on the cusp of he was only like a year. Like My Beautiful Laundrette was when he started really getting noticed.
Yeah.
But this isn't about Daniel Day-Lewis. This is about Phil Davis.
Phil Davis. He does a great job with this role. He plays the role just skeevy enough that you kind of want him to be the murderer, but you also understand when Finola, the lady of the manor, kind of says, "Yeah, I kind of like him." You get it.
Yeah, it's very likable.
Yeah.
Also likable, Michael Angelis, who played drummer Nicky Harding. Harding has had a lot of roles, but most people in the UK are going to know him as the narrator of Thomas and Friends, which he took the role over from Ringo Starr in 1991, and he played it until 2012. That was in the UK version of the show, where in the US, that role was played by George Carlin. Harding passed away in May of 2020.
Then we have, of course, the managers, who play Simon Dixon, who is played by Sam Hazeldine. This is his first appearance. He will come back. And he's appeared previously in Life on Mars, Peaky Blinders, Ripper Street, and The Witcher. And soon you're going to see him opposite Gary Oldman in the upcoming spy thriller series, Slow Horses, which, for those of you who listened to our first podcast, you'll have heard our guest star talk about this series from one of her authors.
It's Mick Herron, and our guest was Juliet Grames. And if you haven't heard that episode, it's one back in the feed, so, give it a listen.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? We had some return visitors to Midsomer this week. Tilly Blackwood, who played Finola Harcourt in this episode. She actually is in the first season episode Death in Disguise. That's the one with the murders at a New Age cult. Other series that she's appeared on include Endeavor, Stella, and AbFab.
She's so fun in this role. I really like her in this role. We also have her husband Desmond, who is played by Rupert Vansittart. He's appeared in the episodes Market for Murder, The Dogleg Murders, where he's beaten to death with a golf club. You've seen him in other shows like Outlander, Game of Thrones, and The Crown, as well as the films Braveheart and Four Weddings and a Funeral. And he always plays some kind of snooty character with a stick up his ass.
It's funny.
And he does it very well. He's probably a really nice guy.
It's funny. He's in a couple of things with Cosmo. So I was curious if they had, if there was any kind of friendship between the two of them. I couldn't find anything online, but that would be, if anyone who's listening happens to know that they're friends or whatever, because they do some of the same projects, drop us a line. we'd love to know more about it.
Yeah.
And then we had one more quick return, as we mentioned before, the magical Rockin' Vicar, Brian Matheson. He also played that same vicar in The Ghosts of Christmas Past, the season 8 Christmas episode.
Now we're going to delve a little bit into history because I love history, but we're not going too far back because we're talking about the Midsomer Music Festival and the history of the UK's many long-running rock festivals. In the UK, the rock festivals often grew out of jazz and blues festivals, and they have a longer tradition of annual rock festivals than we do in the US. Some of the main ones are the Fairport's Capriti Convention, which is held in Oxfordshire and has been since 1976. It's headed by the legendary folk group Fairport Convention and runs every year with annual attendance of around 20,000 people. That makes it the biggest annual music festival in the UK, since others with bigger attendance take hiatuses. Besides Fairport Convention, other performers over the years have included Steve Winwood, Jethro Tull, Yusuf Salaam, who is also known as Cat Stevens, the Saw Doctors, Loudon Wainwright III, Chuckle Truck, and Captain Coco's Country Dance Band, which has nothing to do with Cocoa Puffs, I was sad to learn. Next, we have the Isle of Wight Festival, which originated in 1968 as a countercultural event that grew so popular by 1970 that Parliament had to change the laws regarding open-air gatherings to tamp down on it. Major acts who performed include Bob Dylan, The Who, Joe Cocker, Jimi Hendrix, Miles Davis, Jethro Tull, The Doors, Jefferson Airplane, and Joni Mitchell, just to name a few. And even famous rockers like John Lennon and Keith Richards attended the festival as fans. The festival was revived in 2002 with Robert Plant as a headliner. Other major acts who have performed since it came back include David Bowie, REM, Foo Fighters, Coldplay, the Sex Pistols, The Police, Jay-Z, Paul McCartney, Pearl Jam, and Bruce Springsteen. In 2007, when this episode aired, the headliners were Snow Patrol, Muse, and the Rolling Stones. Next, we have the Knebworth Festival, and it was originally called Bucolic Frolic, which I really love. I think they should have kept it at that. It was held irregularly and drew major acts from 1974 to 2014, and performers included the Stones, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, the Beach Boys, Eric Clapton, Elton John, and, interestingly, Queen in their final performance with Freddie Mercury. Then we have the Glastonbury Festival, which is a 5-day music festival that's been around since 1970, with annual attendance of around 200,000 people. Over the years, pretty much every major musical act of the time has played Glastonbury. In 2007, the headliners were the Arctic Monkeys, The Who, The Killers, and Adele, Amy Winehouse, and Arcade Fire also performing. Unfortunately, it's been on a COVID hiatus for 2 years, but it is announced that it will return this summer, with headliners Paul McCartney, Billie Eilish, Kendrick Lamar, and Diana Ross, the Supreme. And then we have the Reading Rock Festival, which has been held since 1961, making it the oldest popular music festival still in existence. It was originally named the National Jazz Festival, and it was held at the Richmond Athletic Ground until 1971, when it moved to Reading. In 1963, several R&B groups were added, including the Rolling Stones. But by 1965, jazz and blues had been relegated to the afternoon sessions only. In 1984, the Reading Town Council tried to ban the festival, but it was back in 1986. In 1992, Nirvana headlined and recorded their performance, which was widely bootlegged for years before being officially released as their Live in Reading album. In 2007, the headliners were the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Razorlight, and Smashing Pumpkins. Early on in the episode, Tom Barnaby refers to the Richmond Jazz and Blues Festival as where he saw the Axeman for the first time. And though he mentions Muddy Waters as the headliner, Muddy Waters never played at the festival, whether it was in Richmond or later in Reading. And then finally, we have the Rhythm Festival, which was held from 2006 to 2010 at Twinwood Arena in Bedfordshire. Bedfordshire. Since most of Midsomer Murders are filmed in Bedfordshire, this gave them a great opportunity to film the Midsomer Rocks Music Festival at an actual festival. The festival limited attendance to 5,000 people, which is why the crowd scenes look a bit sparse for a music festival. In 2006, when Midsomer filmed the episode, the festival included were Roger Chapman and the Shortlist, seen performing in the episode from a distance, Gina Washington and the Ram Jam Band, who are seen on stage a few times, Jerry Lee Lewis, Donovan, and Arlo Guthrie. While they were filming, BBC DJ and host of Top of the Pops Mike Reed would make announcements over the public address system that had to do with the show, thus confusing the entire crowd. Reed also makes a cameo in the episode asking the band if they are ready to take the stage and to stay sober. So, there it is, the music festivals. It's amazing the talent that they bring to these festivals on a consistent basis.
Reading is something, I've heard about forever. Glastonbury is another famous one. It's like little Woodstock level concerts that you're getting every summer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge, they're huge draws. Maybe not the one, maybe not the one that we were watching with the Axeman. It was a very white crowd.
It was a very white crowd. It's a very white episode, and there has been discussion of this online and amongst the Midsomer community and with critics that talk about how white Midsomer is, and it does kind of really stand out in this episode because it is about the blues, which is not a white art form originally. So to just show the one group, Gino Washington and the Ram Jam Band, who are from the United States, those are really the only Black people we see in the episode.
You also sort of had that classic, the old money versus new money, old versus the new, the classic Midsummer tension where the old English village and the modern rockers. I think the old village was probably best personified by Lord Harcourt, who might as well just run out there and go, "Get your rockers out of my yard!"
Yeah. Get off my lawn, you rock and roll drug heads. Which he does actually go to the police station and say, "They're all on drugs."
Yeah. No, they're all drunk.
Yeah, really. They've given up the drugs. Now they just do vodka.
I think it's interesting is like this music festival seemed to be weirdly set up. First of all, like I believe they said Hired Gun was playing on a Monday,
which is a weird day to be playing. Usually music festivals run over a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yep.
If they're 5 days, they might start maybe, I assume, midweek, like a Wednesday. Yeah, but it'll be like a summer, during the summer, which of course this is set in the summer, so people would be on vacation. But it was, the Monday thing was weird.
I think it was very clear that they were shooting this in the morning. Before like the crowd, like the real crowds were there, because then they would explain why like Hired Gun has the morning slot. Like it's like they're supposed to be these rock gods. Like they literally showed like little hippies recognizing the Axeman as he's driving into Midsomer.
Yeah,
it's like you would think like if you've got that kind of facial recognition, they would be a night slot. Like this is a classic band reuniting. Yeah, at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
They have nap time at 4. They need to, There was one thing I did notice. Who the fuck is running this festival? Because backstage passes seem to allow you everywhere. A guy in a full-on clown costume gets backstage at the festival. They actually, in the shot where he goes under the stage, they pan over. There's a roadie who is watching this guy in a clown costume go under the stage, does nothing to stop him.
He's a clown. Of course he can go anywhere.
He's like, well, he's got the pass. I guess he can go under the stage. It's like no. And then that's not what happens. And then Cully is on stage when Hired Gun's going to go on. Yeah. Like, again, I've been to many concerts. I have seen people on the stage that are clearly like fans or like rich people they are never in front of the amplifiers on stage. They are in the back. You see them kind of back around. They're not on stage. Like I half expected one of the members of Hired Gun to come out there and just turn around and go, "Who the fuck are you?" Yeah.
Yeah, both Cully and the Axeman's daughter Willow are both basically, they're not in the wings. They are on stage. Yeah.
But see, Willow is at least I can understand. Like Willow is the daughter of the guitarist. Like, I get that. Cully is like not even gone on a date yet with the manager, and she's just standing around on stage. That was but the one that got me was when the roadie is like just staring at the clown guy as he's going onto the stage. It was like clearly like just some roadie who was like, yeah, don't mess with the actor. But it's like, in real life, he should have been, hey,
yeah, I'm the roadie. This is my job.
What are you? Don't go under there.
Yeah, clown.
And the last thing I noticed about this is like, I guess Mike Reed. And one of the things that I think he was confusing the audience, he was like, it's the Midsummer Music Festival with the best music around. And like, really? No offense.
Other festivals are getting the Stones.
And no offense to like the actual musical performance there, but it was just like the stars are supposed to be hired gun who,
yeah,
I don't think we've expressed enough how bad they are. They are terrible. They are a terrible band. Dollhouse Blues is a terrible song. It's a terrible quarter song. It's gibberish. It's not even the blues. There's no blues in that song. It's a hard rock song. Fine.
It is a hard rock song.
But
forget it, Eric. It's Midsummer.
We're going to take a break right now, and we're going to come back, and we are going to talk about the second half right after this. We are back. Let's talk about the second half of The AXEMAN COMETH.
We followed the true blues path. It was Johnson, Hopkins, John Lee Hooker.
Mr. John Lee, my man, eh?
McKinley is a little perturbed that someone tried to blow up him and his daughter, lashing out at the detectives, although Jones isn't convinced it was sabotage and not just faulty bike maintenance. When Gary tells them the band hasn't had any real royalties in years, Barnaby and Jones dig into the finances and find out that the band's royalties are actually tied up in an offshore trust that Gary has sole access to. If Gary dies, the remaining members get the money. Gary goes through the Ginger Foxton file and finds a photo of some groupies, one of whom is circled. Barnaby's instincts tell him that this is important for some reason, and he sends Jones on a hunt to find out who she is. To honor the memory of Mimi, Axeman, Dixon, and Nikki decide to go to a pub. Nikki gets wasted and accuses Dixon's dad of helping Gary steal their money, which rubs Dixon the wrong way. Axeman helps a drunken Nikki back to the manor and lets him sleep in his car to avoid his wife. Axeman then proceeds to sleep with said wife. And you thought your band had problems. But the Axeman isn't the only band member getting busy in the manor. Gary and Lady Harcourt enjoy an evening together and discuss the possibility of her becoming Lady Gary. This sends Stanton into a tizzy, but Hobson reassures her that they are still in control of Gary. In the morning, Nikki's wife, Jeannie, finds the car in the pool, with Nikki dead inside. The coroner determines that he was dead before the car hit the pool, and fibers found on him point to suffocation with a hypoallergenic pillowcase. Unfortunately, due to Gary's allergies, these pillowcases are all over the house, so anyone could have done it. Willow rats out her dad, sleeping with Jeannie, but this gives him an alibi. Dixon also has an alibi as he was out with his new friend, Cully, a fact that Jones tries really, really hard to keep to himself. The detectives finally learn that the groupie in the photograph is named Ingrid Peterson, and they track her down to a special care facility. Ta-da! It's the woman from the beginning. She's suffering from some vaguely described mental disorder and is unable to communicate. This leads Barnaby back to his old boss, who not only has been reinvestigating the Foxton disappearance, but claims to have cracked it. Barnaby brings Jenkins, the band, Hobson, and Stanton together in the manor, where Jenkins claims that Hobson is actually Ginger Foxton. However, Barnaby one-ups his old boss and explains that Hobson is actually Foxton's brother. He was there the day his brother died in the car crash and chose to hide his body. His plan was to use fear to gain control over Gary and hence the band's finances in a complicated revenge plot out of Scooby-Doo. Stanton is Ginger's daughter, but neither of them are the murderer, which we discover when Barnaby and Jones returns to Ingrid's care facility to catch her regular afternoon visitors, Willow and the Axeman. And here's the reveal. 30 years ago, Ingrid was a groupie, and the members of Hired Gun got her hooked on drugs that caused her issues. Jack fell for her and took care of her, getting her off drugs and eventually having Willow with her. But as Willow showed signs of her own issues, Ingrid's guilt caused her to retreat into her silent world. Jack blames the band for what happened to her and has been killing them in his own sense of righteous justice. He ran a wire to the microphone cord that he controlled with his wah-wah pedal and suffocated drunk Nikki and pushed the car into the pool. Barnaby is left with the task of putting his idol in the back of a police car and driving him to the station as Hired Gun's Dollhouse Blues plays, reminding us that this was a truly terrible band. So some classics. We got some usual strange kills in this episode. We obviously talked a little bit about Susie Quattro's death as electrocution on stage, and then Nicky gets drowned. Well, not drowned. He gets murdered and then pushed into a pool.
Yep.
In the car, which sadly he says in the beginning of the episode he hasn't driven a car in a pool for a while. Hey, shut up.
I have to say, and this is a very, very personal confession, I have never driven a car into a pool.
I have not. It's not really been like, I can't even imagine like how blitzed you'd have to be like, yeah, put it in the pool. Like maybe if you're like trying to park and you back it into the pool, I get it, but like, no, it's just fun to put it in a pool.
Who knows? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, baby.
Yeah. So the killer is the Axeman. What did you think of his reasoning?
I understand it a bit, but it seems he doesn't take responsibility for his own part in it. He admits that he had been drinking up until 10 years ago. So that's, Willow is probably in her 20s. So he'd been drinking well into her, into her tweens.
Yeah.
So he has some responsibility there that he completely ignores.
I'm also not quite sure that it's really the band's fault. It's like
it was the lifestyle everybody was doing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but also, first of all, the drugs made her crazy, and then also passed that genetically on to her kid. That seems very much out of like the drug education classes I took in high school. It's like, LSD gives you babies with deformities.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not really true. From my understanding is that Ingrid would have had to have already had probably some kind of like schizophrenia or bipolar, or already some kind of issues that she would have been medicating with the drugs. And that the band getting her hooked on whatever, LSD, they don't really explain like what's like, what would heroin or cocaine or anything. They don't really explain what the drug was, or how it made her this way, or how it could have been passed down to Willow. None of that is. It's just like, well, the band did this to her. The fact that she was hooked on drugs, not quite the compelling evidence or the compelling reason that I thought.
Yeah.
I also didn't think that they really did a great job of hiding that it was him.
No, this is why I say, as much as I love this episode, I don't think it's the best mystery.
No.
Jones basically figures it out early on. There's really only one person it can be.
Well, he is the one that says, Mimi, get up on, you're singing first.
Yeah.
He's the one that, hey, Nikki, get in the car.
Yeah.
There's a point where he is talking to Hobson, and he's like, he's clearly just like, I'm on to you. I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're running this thing.
Yeah.
And Hobson goes, he was always the smart one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just seemed like they were like, all signs point to the Axeman.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't put James Cosmo at the center and not either make him a victim, which, they played him off as a fake victim, or the murderer.
Yeah. He's so great. He's really compelling. And it's like, I do think on some level, his reasoning is bullshit. And I think he as an actor probably understands that, but he sells it in such a wonderful way that it's very clear he believes his own bullshit.
Oh yeah. He's totally bought into it. And Cosmo sells it so well that you really do kind of say, yeah, that works.
I did love the clown outfit. I mean, I really don't know if it was actually him in the clown outfit, but that just the idea of like, yeah, it's like Barnaby's thing was just like, this is clearly been meticulously planned by a left brain person. And like, so let me get this straight. He got them all there, planned to have a giant clown costume to get underneath the stage, to then run the wire up there to electrocute her, which seems to me like there's a number of ways that could have gone wrong. Then, he gets his buddy drunk, puts him in a car. So it's not a meticulously planned. It's just like half of it feels like, oh, I got him here.
Yeah. There are parts of it that are very opportunistic to it. I think there was an overall plan, as he says with Gary, he was going to have him die of a drug overdose or something because he did the whole PSA on against drugs and stuff like that. So,
which also would have been interesting because it would have been clear he would have been murdered.
Yeah,
like at that point, it would have been like, no, he's murdered. They gave him drugs. It's like yeah, it would have ruined his image. It's like, no, it really wouldn't have.
You're the only one left standing, Axeman.
Yeah. Your plan has a hole.
Yeah. But also, he's a musician. Musicians also know how to follow an overall melody and then improvise against it, which is what he's doing here.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like it's just that right brain, left brain thing. It's so silly.
Yeah, Jones didn't buy it either.
As he shouldn't have. Jones was the smarter here.
Yeah.
Smarter man. One other thing I wanted to say about the Ingrid and the groupie and all this stuff. What was the point of the freakouts?
Other than to show her earlier in the program, in the episode, than they would if they just showed up and said, hey, you're this groupie. They had to find some way to tie her in, and they came up with this bogus, she somehow, because of her drugs and whatever else is going on with her semi-functioning brain, she's tuned in with dying animals as they are found.
Which is nuts because that hospital's nowhere near. They specifically tied it into him finding these animals, but in a way that like they're trying to edit it together, like, oh, she can see it, or she has knowledge of it, or portraits, it's like she could see in the future. But there's like nothing that like ties that in at the end. Like you could have just had her show up in the second half, and this is this person, and she's a catatonic person in this hospital.
Yeah.
Which also, by the way, does that mean Axeman and his daughter just live in Midsomer anyways?
Because they come by at 5 every day.
Yeah. So why are they staying with Gary? Like, wouldn't they just see Gary all the time anyways?
And know he's Mr. Toad?
Yeah. Let's check in on the Barnaby home life.
Yep.
This is the beginning of Collie leaving the show.
Yeah.
Dickhead and her do end up getting married a few episodes down the road. Did they have chemistry?
There was enough there. It was nice. I can see it.
I mean, they had sex. They
definitely had sex. They were rocking that boat.
Oh God. But I thought it was interesting because it's the first time it's the first episode where they have actually intimated that Cully is a being who has a sexuality, who actually, it's never happened. They've never indicated that before.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't think they had the strongest chemistry. I will say this. If someone steps on your foot and then immediately grabs your foot, takes your shoe off, and starts rubbing your foot, are you going to look at that person as, I might want to go out with this guy, or what does this guy do? Get your damn hands off my foot.
I don't know. It depends. Am I paying them for a pedicure?
It's supposed to be a meet cute, I guess.
It's supposed to be meet cute.
It's not. It's a meat creep.
It is kind of a meat creep, yeah.
This is just some rando guy at a music festival.
Almost
who then says his name is Dickhead.
Yeah. Most meat cutes are pretty much meat creeps, let's face it. It's got a pretty creepy history to it,
I just also think that he has handed her a weapon for every fight they will ever have when they're married. Yeah, you are a dickhead.
Yeah, you don't introduce yourself with that nickname. I have a childhood nickname that nobody ever will ever never know.
And the one thing I feel like they missed an opportunity of, I really wish Barnaby had found out that Cully was the alibi. Because can you imagine like the Nettles reaction to that?
I just loved Jones going doing everything he could to not have him find out.
I know.
The scene where he says, "I'm leaving town."
Is there anything else you wanted to throw in on this episode?
Well, I think there are a couple things. I think one of the things that ties this episode thematically together is everyone's kind of playing something that they're not.
Mhm.
Axeman is pretending to be drunk when he's sober. Gary is pretending to be a gentleman or Mr. Toad.
Mm-hmm.
The brother and
Oxman's,
the
yeah.
niece are pretending to be a butler and an assistant. There's somebody pretending to be a blues musician and not an aging detective. We'll have some, having some weird midlife crisis. But we're not gonna say who that is. The only one who stays true to himself is Jones.
And Cully.
And Cully. And Joyce, who loves her madrigals.
Mm-hmm.
Just a quick mention of the title, which is a reference to The Iceman Cometh by Eugene O'Neill. It's a play set in a Greenwich Village bar and revolves around the myriad drunken patrons who are its regulars, probably Mimi. One of them is a charismatic traveling salesman, and he eventually confesses to murdering his wife. And like in this episode, there's only one black character. There are a couple tropes that kind of go around with the whole rock and roll lifestyle thing, the never found body, Elvis lives kind of thing. And obviously the very drunken lifestyle of the rock and rollers. It's
comical. It's so comically, there's a point where quick corner. There's a point where Bullard's doing the autopsy on Mimi, and he's like, I don't know how she was walking. You actually got to see like the heart and the liver or whatever.
Yeah.
Like she should not have been moving. And
Dr. Bullard doesn't have many scenes in this, but when he does, he makes the best of them in this one.
Yeah.
And when Nettle says a different breed, and Bullard says musicians, and he says pathologists.
Yeah, it was. The funny thing is like because they're aging, it's in some ways they're also sort of reliving the childhood that Barnaby is like their childhood was this rock and roll, sex, drugs, rock and roll, but they're in their 50s. They're in their 50s. It's not even charming. It's just sad.
Yeah.
It's playing it for laughs, but reality wise, if you ran into a 60-year-old who was drinking like Mimi was drinking, or Nikki, you'd be like, that's sad. Yeah. That's kind of sad. And like they would probably be dead.
And let's face it, the only one who's going to live to be 500 years old is Keith Richard.
Yep. Who doesn't smoke or drink anymore, so. All right, final thoughts on the Axeman.
Like we said at the beginning, I think it's a great episode. Even with all its issues, it's so much fun. It's a fun episode. It has some great performances. It's got a real different feel to it than the traditional one, but you're still in that small village world, which is what Midsomer is. Yeah. And it's playing with that a lot in this episode, which I love when it does that.
Yeah, it's fun. It makes no logical sense, but I mean, you don't watch Midsomer for logic. I had a good time seeing, as you said, is like it's such an atypical Barnaby, and yet Nettles is clearly having a little bit of a goofy, fun time with this. Even if a jam session with the suspect is so massively out of character. Yeah. Obviously, the death on stage is a classic. That is a classic kill. And Cosmo's Axeman is fun, even though I'm not quite sure what he said half the time. That's a thick Scottish accent.
That is a thick Scottish accent. But for me, he is one of the top characters in the Midsomer Murders canon.
Yeah. So that's everything we wanted to talk about. We want to thank you for listening to us. And if you had anything you wanted to discuss about the AXEMAN COMETH or Midsomer Murders, if you wanted to add your 2 pence, feel free to email us at welcometomidsomer@gmail.com. We are also Welcome to Midsomer on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing to us or rating and reviewing us on iTunes or whatever podcast platform you use. It really helps people find us. Feel free to tell all your friends about us, especially if they watch Midsomer Murders. And if they don't, it's a great way to start getting them hooked on it. We're going to be back next month, and we hope you will join us again. So as we take the road out of Midsomer, we want to thank you for listening and remind you that in Midsomer Worthy, the true blues path can be murder.
And usually is.
Welcome to Midsomer is produced by Eric Buscher and Eileen Becker. All clips in this podcast are used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act Fair Use Exemption for criticism and commentary. Our logo and podcast art was designed by Smeedrai. Our theme music is by the infamous Space.